I never thought a simple weekend retreat to my late grandfather's cabin would unravel into one of the most bizarre encounters of my life, but that's exactly what happened when a woman I had never met before decided that my truck, parked neatly beside the cabin I owned outright, was somehow a violation of her imaginary authority, and her reaction was not only ridiculous but ended with her breaking down in tears once the police got involved. So let me take you from the very beginning, because the setup makes the twist at the end even more satisfying, and the look on her face when she realized the truth was absolutely priceless. So it started when I arrived at my lake cabin, a property that had been in my family for generations, a place my grandfather built with his own two hands back in the 1950s, long before there was even paved road access to that part of the lake, and this cabin was my sanctuary, tucked away behind tall pines and resting on a quiet slope that led down to the clear blue water. And for me, driving my truck up there on a Friday night with a cooler of food, some fishing gear, and maybe a few good books was the definition of peace. But apparently peace was exactly what my new neighbor, who I later learned was notorious around town for being what you might call a Karen, did not want me to have, because the moment she saw my truck, she stormed across her yard in flip-flops and a bathrobe like she was a sheriff patrolling the Wild West, waving her phone at me and shouting that parking trucks was against WA rules, and that she would call the police if I didn't move it immediately, which confused the heck out of me, because not only did I not live in any WA-governed neighborhood, but my cabin was technically on its own lot surrounded by 3 acres of land my grandfather bought decades ago, and the nearest development with an HOA was half a mile away on the other side of the lake. So I laughed at first, thinking maybe she was joking or just mistaken, but when she started snapping pictures of my license plate and demanding my name, I realized she was dead serious, so I calmly told her that I wasn't in her WA, that this was my property, and that I was free to park wherever I pleased, but she wasn't having any of it, instead insisting that all properties around the lake fall under WA oversight, which was an outright lie, and when I refused to engage further, she shrieked something about illegal vehicles lowering property values, and stormed off yelling into her phone, and within 20 minutes, sure enough, I saw the flashing blue and red lights of a county sheriff's cruiser coming down the gravel road, and at that point, I wasn't even mad. I was curious to see how this was going to play out, because I had nothing to hide, and my property paperwork was all in order, so when the deputy stepped out and approached me, I greeted him respectfully and explained the situation, while the woman, who I'll just call Karen, came huffing and puffing behind him, pointing at my truck and rattling off accusations about zoning violations, unregistered vehicles, and even illegal fishing, which made me chuckle because I hadn't even unpacked my fishing pole yet, and the officer raised his eyebrows at her before turning to me and asking if I could provide proof of ownership, which of course I could, so I invited him onto my porch, went inside, and brought out a neatly organized folder my grandfather had left me that included the deed, survey maps, and even old photographs of him building the place, and when I handed it to the deputy, he took his time flipping through, nodding slowly, then looked over at Karen and said, "Ma'am, this cabin and the land surrounding it are not part of your WA jurisdiction, and this gentleman has every right to park his truck here." But instead of backing off, Karen exploded, claiming the officer was in on it, and that she had the right to enforce community standards, which only made the deputy more stern. And he told her plainly that if she continued to trespass on my property or harass me, she could be cited or even arrested, and that's when her bravado cracked, because she tried to argue back but her voice wavered, and eventually she broke down crying, rambling about how she had spent years trying to keep the lake pure, and how outsiders were ruining it, which was ironic since I'd been there decades longer than she had, and the real kicker was when the deputy, clearly fed up, told her that not only was I within my rights, but technically, since part of her property line encroached 2 feet past the surveyed boundary into mine, a detail marked in the official maps, she was actually the one in violation, and she went pale at that revelation, suddenly silent except for muffled sobs, and I'll admit, I felt a mix of satisfaction and pity, because while it was nice to see justice served, it was also sad to watch someone unravel so completely over something so petty. But that wasn't even the end, because a week later I received a letter from her WA board apologizing for her behavior and clarifying that they had no authority over my property whatsoever, and apparently she had been reprimanded for abusing her position as neighborhood watch chair, or whatever unofficial title she had given herself, and word around town was that she became the butt of many jokes at the local diner, people calling her Sheriff Karen, or Lake Cop, and every time I drove back to my cabin after that, I noticed she avoided eye contact, never dared to step foot near my place again, and ironically, she ended up putting her house on the market within a year, probably because she couldn't handle the embarrassment, while I continued enjoying my weekends fishing, reading, and sitting by the water in peace, occasionally chuckling at the memory of how her plan to shame me had backfired so spectacularly. And if there's a lesson in all of this, it's that some people create drama where none exists, trying to exert control over things that don't belong to them. But the truth always comes out, and sometimes it comes with flashing lights, legal documents, and a reality check so sharp it brings even the loudest Karens to tears.